Family is everything. These are the words of Jonathan Ruiz when he was called as a witness on the stand. Family is often seen as a safe haven, a group of people you can rely on no matter what, with unconditional love and protection. Or can we? Is the case of Scott Kologi right now on Love and Murder. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Love and Murder, the weekly true crime podcast discussing relationships gone terribly wrong, where our motto is, you're either someone's last love or their first murder. I am your host, Kai, and our show discusses true crime cases told in the form of a story with mystery and suspense. Be sure to subscribe to Love and Murder on Spotify, Apple, or whatever platform you're on. Did you know that we are also on Amazon Music and Amazon Podcasts, so you could listen to us on any Amazon device that you have? In today's episode, we're talking about a case of family and betrayal. But first, I wanted to remind you to head on over to our exclusive LAM group at www.patreon.com/loveandmurder. Over there, you can find bonus episodes. You can find these full-length true crime episodes with no commercials and no interruption. And you can find a community of like-minded true crime enthusiasts such as yourself. Head on over there, www.patreon.com/loveandmurder, and you can get started for only $1 a month. However, the best tier is $5 and above. And we'll talk about that later on in the show. So let's get into the story. The way I'm going to tell this case is a bit different than I normally tell my cases, so I hope you all like it. Let me know what you think about this style of case telling. It was a crisp New Year's Eve of 2017. The quiet beach town of Long Beach, Monmouth County, and I probably said that wrong, let me know in the comments, New Jersey was all set up for a ball drop. Typically known for summer carnivals, Long Branch is home to over 32,000 Americans. This city has some of the oldest fire departments in the USA and is the most established. What's so special about Long Branch, New Jersey? It's a legendary Jersey Shore hotspot for surfing, sunbathing, and fantastic family fun. You'll find upscale shops and eateries at the Pier Village, making it a great spot to enjoy a unique cultural culinary experience on the East Coast. I might go visit that. Don't live too far from it. Near the beach, in a working-class part of town, there's a modest brick duplex. On New Year's Eve, 2017, there was a small party going on in that house. The house was cluttered and cramped, but it was warm, and it was home, and it had family. The tall, athletic Stephen Kologi, born in 1971 in Long Branch, had graduated from the local high school where he also played football. Stephen was handsome and never had trouble getting dates. Stephen did not attend college and decided to stay in his hometown because it had everything he wanted. Sunshine, good food, familiar faces. Right? A few years after graduation, he met Linda. Her bubbly laughter and kind eyes had him smitten. She had a little boy named Jonathan from a previous relationship, and Stephen instantly hit it off with him. Linda was born in 1973 and had spent her life in foster homes, yet the system had not tainted her beautiful smile. She was extremely protective of her son and had a positive outlook on life. Having attended college in Brooksdale for 2 years, she held an accounting certificate and had absolutely no trouble finding jobs. She was tough because of her upbringing, but she was warm and sweet to everyone. She took a liking to Long Branch because of the sense of community the small city had to it. Stephen and Linda tied the knot soon after and had Stephen Jr. and their own daughter, Brittany. With 3 children under their roof, the couple made ends meet by working together. With the turn of the century around the corner and the Y2K bug hype, y'all remember that. Well, people my age remember that. That was, hilarious and scary. If you don't know about it, look it up. Y2K bug. The couple had their 4th child, whom they named Scott. Linda suffered complications at birth. Her son was born with a tumor in his brain, as well as because of the difficulty in Linda's birth, this gave him some underlying medical conditions. Now, anyone who marries young and goes through financial hardship can find themselves, a little frazzled, that's to say the least. By 2002, the couple purchased the house Stephen grew up in from his mother, Carol Kologi. It was a cozy brick duplex just right for their family, since, they were a bigger family now. What is it, 5 people in the family? Stephen Kologi Sr., 44, was a hardworking man. Described by his coworkers as a tough cookie and a family man, Stephen Sr. didn't have a stable source of income, but he definitely made sure the family had hot meals and a roof over their heads. A friend, Mike Sullivan, lovingly called him Cujo and expressed how he was there for his friends. Stephen was the captain of the baseball team at work and even coached youth baseball. Neighbors described the couple as devoted parents. The family came first and they prioritized their children above everything else. This was a couple that didn't set aside their dreams. They, in fact, made their family their true aim in life. Linda's calling in life, as was said by her son Stephen Jr., was to be a mother. Having grown up in foster care herself, she made sure her children were never left wanting anything. Times were tough, but the parents made sure the children had presents, toys, new clothes, and never felt any less. Jonathan Ruiz was very close to Stephen Sr., though not his biological father. He was a father in every other aspect, always spending meaningful family time with Jonathan. Linda had been a bus driver in 2013, while Stephen worked in the U.S. Postal Service before switching to Kellogg's warehouse in Cranberry. His manager said he was the most productive man there, learning everything there was to learn. But, as you would have it, in 2017, the company foreclosed and the Kologis were left unemployed. Sounds about right. Linda collected unemployment benefits since she was in between jobs, while her husband worked as a mailman and provided what he could. Although times were tough now, their financial troubles had actually started in 2009, and in that time they had filed for bankruptcy. The couples faced even more troubles as they got a notice in August 2017 for foreclosure. So not only did his company foreclose, well, not his company, but the company he worked for, his house was foreclosing as well in the same year. Could you imagine the stress? Linda, and as speaking of stress, kept it all bottled up and never let anyone know how troubled she was. Her only outlet was her Twitter feed. And I'll have some of her Twitter feed in our Patreon. So if you want to go over there and see those Twitter messages that Linda had posted, you can go to our Patreon, www.patreon.com/loveandmurder. In those Twitter feeds, she expressed that she would end her life if that meant her family could use her insurance money. She would do anything for them. Or was it dark depression sneaking up on her? Though Linda never sought professional help, it's apparent that she suffered from severe depression. The financial crunch had stressed her out immensely, which it would do to anybody, and she had a hard time dealing with all the pressure. Even though she had no behavioral issues, Linda still had a lot on her plate, and she seemed on edge all the time, especially since the foreclosure notice. That's the thing, guys. Why is it such a taboo thing to seek medical help for mental health issues? It's getting better now, but back in the day, it was actually seen as weak. And I wonder if it's still seen as that now, or are we really getting out of that mindset? In December, the bank had issued a statement that they would proceed with the foreclosure. Together, the couple had made the family comfortable in their small home. Losing the house would mean more than just losing property. To them, the house had emotional significance. Adrian Kologi, the father of Stephen Sr., was relaxing with his longtime partner, Mary Schultz. Linda's son, Jonathan Ruiz, had stopped by earlier that afternoon, but he was close to Adrian. He was the only grandparent the boy had ever known. Linda's sister, along with her husband, were all present at the house for a little get-together. Adrian and then 70-year-old Mary had been in a relationship long enough for her to be a family member. The children knew her as their grandmother, and they all lived together and visited and everything in that little brick house. Together, for more than 33 years, Mary had been there for all of Stephen Sr.'s football games, and she was there for all of Brittany's games. She was truly their grandma. By the time of this story, Brittany was 18 years old, turning 19 in 3 weeks. She was actually home for winter break, and she had invited her friends as well. And they were just at the house chilling, laughing, you know how they do. In college, she was majoring in health sciences, and she was currently a freshman at Stockton University. Like her dad, she graduated from Long Branch High School, and where he played football, she had been the head of the softball team. The only sister, she was beloved and adored. As her best friend Shannon Nutley put it, she was a ray of sunshine. Quote, Brittany was the best person in high school. Everyone loved her. She was a very artistic girl and loved to paint and draw. She had planned to spend a break with her family and then head back to college, as you normally do. Her and her friend had actually planned to go out to a party that night, but Brittany felt like she really needed family this night. It was so calm, so peaceful. It just, put the stress of college behind her. At 11:40 p.m., Brittany posted a Snapchat photo to her friends, laying down with her cat. At 11:43 p.m., 911 was called from the Kologi home to report a tragedy. Although only a half-brother, Jonathan Ruiz was very close to his family. He had a wireless communications business and purchased his own home in Toms River, so he was doing really well for himself. He was glad he could spend some time with everyone. He had lived with them for so long, and they had such a good time bonding. This was who he knew was his family. His mother was a strong, courageous woman, and she taught him to stand tall in the face of adversity. She made him who he was today, and he loved his parents more than he could say. That day, he left the Kologi house around 4 p.m. to go and visit his girlfriend and to meet a friend in Philadelphia. Everyone was in a good mood. It was just such a great day, nice and sunny, friends, family, he was just so happy. So later on that night, when he got a call, it was just really shocking, and he just really couldn't formulate what was being said to him. Scott Kologi was a special boy. He was born with a tumor in his head, like I said before, and much of his cognitive functions appeared to be different from other people. Ever since he was a toddler, Scott displayed disparity in his disabilities. He reached all the milestones with delays, and at 16, he didn't hang out with friends at all because basically he didn't even have any. Autistic and severely misunderstood, he plays with his toys and enjoyed the warmth of his mother's hand on his forehead. He was one of those kids who slept in his parents' bed until the age of 15, which I guess to everybody else that would be weird, but he was autistic, so maybe it was familiar with him, and it was hard to change him out of sleeping in his parents' bedroom. And I guess by 15, they finally were able to do that. Although Scott was on the autism spectrum, he had yet to be treated by mental health professionals. Not very successful at making friends, he was often bullied, as people do. I don't understand that. Just because he can't make friends or he's different, why are you bullying him? He didn't go to Long Branch High School. Instead, when he was 9 years old, his parents decided to take him out due to academic and social troubles. Scott was homeschooled till 7th grade, after which his parents enrolled him in a school for differently abled children. This greatly helped Scott. Extra attention from his parents and extra attention from the teachers. This combination helped him succeed in math, and he finally learned to read. That's all he needed was extra attention. Michelle, and I'm going to mess up her last name, Michelle Molyneux, Molyneux. I know EAUX is no, so I'm guessing Molyneux. Michelle Molyneux, Linda's sister, said he often was troubled with violent thoughts. Scott did try to discuss his feelings with his mother, but Linda, it kind of made her uncomfortable and she didn't want to hear it. And maybe she thought if he didn't talk about it, they would just go away. So she always stopped him from talking about it by saying stuff like, quote, "Don't say that or they will lock you up in the loony bin," end quote. Now, Michelle often heard these conversations, but she said nothing. I guess she figured this is not saying this ain't my kid, but it's not her child. It's not her place. Maybe she had a difference in opinion, but she felt, again, like it wasn't her place to say it. As evident from her tweets, Linda was clearly struggling with her own problems. And part of those problems is because of foster care. Remember, she was in foster care, bouncing around and around and around all her life. She had become fearful that she might be institutionalized herself. So, because of her own fear, she kind of pushed this fear onto her son. So, she didn't want him talking like that so that they wouldn't institutionalize him. So, I guess that answered my previous question. Like every mother, she thought her son, Scott, was harmless. But Scott would say the strangest things, like, quote, I would have to kill you, Mom. Then I'd have to kill Dad because he would be sad without you. End quote. He would say that he hated Brittany and he wanted to kill her. And Linda, would just basically, whenever he said anything about Brittany, she would really just try to calm him down and make him change his mind. Like one time when Michelle was in the car in the back seat, she heard Scott say that he hated Brittany, and Linda responded with, quote, they'll take you away from me. And do you really want to go to the loony bin? End quote. So it seems like she said that, a lot in response to whenever he said something that was uh, dangerous, something that she should have actually gotten him help for. It seemed like this was her constant response. And you're probably wondering, just like I did, why she didn't take him to the doctor. Well, she said that doctors would put him on medication and she didn't want that for him. So she just wanted him to stop talking about all the bad thoughts he was having. So number one, they wouldn't take him from her. And number two, they wouldn't put him on all kind of medication. But Scott kind of wanted to be on the medication, saying, quote, maybe that will help me. So he was all on board to be on the medication, but his mom just didn't want it. And I wonder why. Is that something to do with being in foster care too? Maybe she thought the medicines were addictive and it would force him to become a drug addict. I don't know. I wonder. One day, during a game of Clue, Scott looked at Michelle's husband. He picked up the gun figurine and said, quote, I'll shoot you. I'll also shoot Michelle. When Michelle asked him if he would spare her, he said, no. He said, quote, no, I will shoot you, but I'll let Robert go home to his family. Then I'll go upstairs and kill Mom and Dad, end quote. Of course, this frightened, I guess frightened is a least word I could use to describe her, how her emotions were, but it scared Michelle. And Michelle turned to her sister and said, quote, you've got to do something about this. It's going to happen. But Linda didn't believe her. And she said, no, not my little sweet boy. Nothing's going to happen. He's just, this is just him. He just talks like this. Now, for Scott, he knew one person could understand where he was coming from. And this is the one person he confided in and he loved over even his mom. And that was his grandfather, Adrian. Adrian could understand Scott because he himself had been diagnosed with schizophrenia. So he understood trying to deal with all the noises in your mind, trying to rein it in, trying to focus and all that stuff. Scott told him about all the violent thoughts he had. And he told him that this all began when people started bullying him. He also told him about vivid hallucinations that he would have that started coming more and more frequently. And with Scott, he just couldn't figure out for himself how to make these hallucinations go away because remember, his mom won't take him to the doctor. So he tried to take showers, he tried to watch TV, he tried to play games just to make these hallucinations go away, but nothing would work. And with the hallucinations, a week before this party, Scott had seen a figure sitting on his bed. But it wasn't his mother. It was this woman that he had seen before. And by seen before, I mean in his head. She turned black. Well, she was black. And then she turned red. And she told him, quote, you're going to have to kill them all. And he wasn't afraid of her because, like I said, he'd seen her before. And he trusted her. And he didn't understand why she kept saying this, but he trusted her. At 11:41 p.m. that night, The family was downstairs waiting for the ball to drop. They were going to watch this on TV, all as a family and everything like that. Scott was the only one not downstairs with the family. He had been upstairs doing his homework, and Linda decided, let me go get him. He should be done with his homework by now. He needs to come downstairs with us to see the ball drop on TV. So when she entered his room, he was sitting in the dark with earplugs in his ears, and he was just sitting on his bed in the dark in his room. She called him, Scott, and right when she said that, there was a bang and a flash of light. Adrian heard the noise, and he was like, was that fireworks? But Stephen Sr. thought differently and ran upstairs after his wife. There were more bangs, and everybody's looking towards the stairs right now. That's when they saw Scott coming down the stairs. He had on sunglasses and a leather jacket on. It was his costume from earlier in the year in which he dressed up as Terminator. Stephen was immobilized as he saw more flashes and heard the thunderous rifle Scott was holding at hip level very calmly. He looked around at his family. Robert and Mary had already gone down to the basement and out the back door. He couldn't see his girlfriend, but Brittany was looking at Scott wide-eyed and afraid. Scott shot Brittany 4 times. She dropped, sputtering blood, squirming. Mary gasped and stood up as Scott aimed at her and fired. Stephen couldn't move or think. Stephen's girlfriend hid behind the fridge and had already called 911. Finally, at around 11:43 p.m., Stephen Jr. came out of his daze and ran for the door. Behind him, Scott lowered his weapon as Adrian screamed. Adrian, at that time, was crying, holding Mary as she was dying, gasping and struggling for breath. As Scott watched his beloved grandfather cry, this seemed to snap him back to reality. He was confused and didn't understand why everyone was like this. He was just pretending to be the Terminator, and he wanted to shoot them. He knew it was bad, but why was Grandpa crying? Why wasn't he angry instead? At that moment, sirens and police officers seemed to just come in the house all at the same time. On January 1st, 2018, at 3:14 a.m., an officer put a hand on Stephen Jr.'s shoulder as he sat quietly at the police station. Quote, "Can I get you a coffee, son?" The officer wanted to do something to help Stephen Jr., but Stephen Jr. just wanted to go home. "How much longer will I be, officer?" Quote, "You are the current legal guardian of Scott Kologi. We will need you to be present during the interrogations." So basically everybody's dead, and now his brother is the guardian of Scott. And he's only in his 20s. So now he has to raise Scott. Police went on to interrogate Scott. And Scott just didn't understand what was going on. If you look at the interrogation video, he just looks like a lost little child. They brought in Stephen Jr., which was his older brother, and he just looked so relieved to see his brother. By habit, Stephen fist bumped him and even held him close to help get him comfortable. The officers then asked Scott what was going on when he shot his family members. And basically he said he wasn't all there mentally. He explained methodically how he shot each member and how many times he shot them. Beside him, Stephen broke down. His face exhibited excruciating pain. To hear his brother confessing to the crimes, it just was all too much for him. Quote, "I just kept firing until they stopped moving. I would aim at their head and whatnot. Yeah, when I saw they were still moving, 'cause even though I was in this type of thing, I just didn't want them to be in pain at the same time." End quote. That's what Scott said. The detectives continued interrogating him, trying to rule out insanity or anything medical. Quote, "But yet you knew what you were doing?" "Yes," he replied. "I was nervous when I was loading the magazines." "Were you hearing any voices, seeing things when this happened?" No. "Did you hear any voices that said, 'Do it'? Visions commanding you to do it?" No. "Did you ever think of killing someone else?" the male detective asked. And Scott said, "Yeah." Now, here's my thing. He did have that woman telling him to do it, which we all know. But you know what? Oh, anyways, I was going to say we all know it's a hallucination. But you know what? We know it's a hallucination, but they don't know it's a hallucination. Like when they're in that mindset that usually doesn't come down until you actually get meds. When they're in that mindset, it's all real to them. So I could see why when they asked, did you have visions? Did you have this? He was answering no, because to him, this person was literally there. It wasn't a hallucination. This is why people need to understand mental health better. Now, another thing is like when he was answering the detective's questions and when he was talking, he seemed like he was emotionless and he seemed like he didn't have remorse, but then you have to ask himself, like, with everything going on with him, did he even understand remorse? Not saying he's a psychopath, but he's autistic. He has hallucinations and all that stuff. So maybe he just didn't understand the concept of remorse because he thought this was something he had to do anyway. Then she asked him, why did you stop? Why didn't you just continue on with everyone? Why did you stop? And he answered, quote, I don't know. I was tired, I guess. I don't know if I'd do it again. Too tired. Scott then told them about taking his brother's gun, who his brother had bought a gun at some point in time, and the mother didn't want them to have a gun in the house. She was like, no, I don't want this. I don't want this. But his brother still kept the gun, even though it started rusting. He just kept it in a case and left it there. And Scott said that he would take his brother's gun out multiple times in the past year, and nobody knew about it. He also said he saw a video on YouTube that showed him how to use the semi-automatic. He had Googled if it would be useful against police officers with bulletproof vests. Police also found out he had been reading about the 2017 London terrorist attacks on his cell phone shortly before the killings. Out of the 14 shots he had fired, 12 of them had fatally hit his family members. Wow. So now I'm changing my tone because now he's actually researching the gun, the impact of the gun, reading about terrorist attacks, and so I'm kind of changing my tone here. A little later into the interrogation, the detective escorted Scott to the restroom. As he was alone with them, for some reason, I guess because his brother's not there, he started crying. He just broke down in tears, and I think it just hit him. And he said, quote, I have hurt a lot of people. And when he came back to the room and during the interrogation, you could see that Stephen had a hard time staying objective with his brother. He knew his brother was mentally handicapped on one hand, but he was still kind of, his brother just shot up his whole family. So he's kind of torn as to what to do. When they asked him to leave the interrogation room at the end of the whole thing, he stopped and gave Scott a hug. So they arrested Scott and charged him with first-degree murder. And they put him in the Middlesex County Youth Detention Center. Scott's defense attorneys wanted him to be shifted to a psychiatric facility until the trial and for the duration of the trial. However, it was denied, and the judge basically was like, no, he's staying in this detention center now and when the trial goes on. Initially, he was tried as a minor, but since the state law was that after 16, he was an adult, he later faced his full trial as an adult. One of his defense attorneys, Ricardo Lemuro, argued his client was mentally ill and wanted only 30 years for him. He claimed that Scott's mental health conditions and autism were behind the shooting, and he wanted the jury to show some compassion regarding the shootings. Quote, the bottom line is, Scott is not a cold-blooded killer. Scott is and was severely mentally ill, but he will be sent to state prison to be with cold-blooded killers. And basically what happened was the trial ended up focusing on, one of the main focuses on, was whether he was criminally insane or he was in his right mind when he carried out this attack. But prosecutors claimed that Scott knew exactly what he was doing, and he was doing it simply because he could. Stephen was called to testify against Scott in the trial, And you could clearly see that it was painful for him to testify against his brother, who he had protected all his life against bullies, and just against bullies and against anybody who wanted to hurt him. He knew how innocent his brother was. They also called Michelle to testify. And they asked her, why didn't she tell anybody about what Scott had been saying all this time? And she said, because, her sister didn't want her to tell anybody, and she didn't want her sister mad at her. But then their question was, well, then why did you tell detectives during the investigation? And she said, quote, I thought Linda was alive. I thought she'd be mad that I told detectives about Scott. She also told them that Scott wanted to get help for his thoughts, that he didn't want to kill his family and should have been given medical attention. However, even though he did have a lot of people in his corner, facts are the facts. And even me myself, before I give the sentences, even me myself, I'm kind of like, he did have a mental health disorder. He did have hallucinations. But then what was up with the whole reading about terrorist attacks and, wondering if this gun was going to pierce through armor and all of it? Like, what was that about? That's my only issue with this. Like, I don't know. Like, I do know people who have mental health issues, and dealing with their situation, they do make some searches. No. Nothing violent. They'll make searches. They'll do searches based on like their medication. Is this medication good for them? But at the moment they're doing the searches, trying to research this, they're literally not in their right mind at the same time. So I guess it can be done. I don't know. That right there is just my only question. Like, mentally ill or not, that I don't know. As a juror, that's the two things I'd be thinking about. Like, his search, what he searched for and what he was reading up on was what is stopping me in my tracks. Like, what about y'all? Tell me in the comments below, what do y'all think? Like, I don't have much experience with mental health issues. I do have a little bit. There may be somebody out there who has more than me. There may be somebody out there who's going through it, and you can tell me. So I just want to know, what do y'all think? So anyways, he was found guilty and sentenced to 150 years in jail, and he will be eligible for parole in 127 and a half years. Basically, it's this long under the terms of the New Jersey's No Early Release Act. Wow, they just really wanted him in jail. Robert Lumero said he would appeal Scott's conviction and his sentence. The judge said, quote, the intention of this court is that this defendant never sees the light outside of a jail ever again. I hope one day you realize the magnitude of what you've done here. End quote. Like I said, they didn't want him out of jail. Every year, Stephen Jr. tweets about his family, about his mom, about giving your loved one an extra hug. And Jonathan remembers his mom as the best mom ever, who was truly the pillar of their family. This case reminds you that mental health issues are valid and require equal medical examination. What do y'all think? Do y'all think people don't take even to this day, do y'all think people don't take mental health issues seriously? Which I don't. I've seen it. I don't. What do y'all think? Let me know in the comments below. And that's all we have for the case of Scott Kologi. This is a sad and confusing case to me because I don't know how to feel about it. Because I don't know. Of course, I feel bad that the people died and were murdered, but I don't know if Scott did it in a fit of mental health issues or if he knew what he was doing. I already told you what part has me confused. So I'd love to hear from y'all. And what did y'all think about the way I told this case? Do y'all like the normal way I tell it, or did y'all like this way? I'm just something different. Not saying I'm changing up anything unless y'all really like this way, but just something different for today. Don't forget to visit us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/loveandmurder. There's actually going to be a bunch of extras from this case in here. You're going to see the arrest warrant. You're going to see the affidavit. You're going to see the interrogation and just a lot of other things in this case, as well as pictures and everything like that. So www.patreon.com/loveandmurder. You can go there, get the extras from each case that I've done. You can also get bonus episodes that we're doing, and just fun extras, more content over there. You get all the full-length episodes with no commercials. You get it first. And you have a like-minded community to talk to and a space to get to know me and Rick, or to get to talk to us easily without having to DM us and wait for us to even see the DMs, because I don't look at my DMs. And the best thing about it is we have options started at only $1 a month, but the best tier that everybody says is the best tier, and I think is the best tier also, is the $5 and above. Our social media links are in the show notes below, so go ahead and click on whichever social media you want to go to and follow us there. And as always, I want to end each episode by reminding you that it's, say it with me now, 1, 2, 3, all love and no murder, y'all. Good night.